Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Health with Dr. Yvette, where we correct myths around medicine and health. So today I'm joined by my colleague and my friend, Dr. Oscar Mloa. I'm sure you guys remember him. He's the one who was here to talk about male circumcision. I hope you guys got circumcised. So today we're going to talk about cholera, or as my Bemba friends would say, cholera.
I mean, so like,
Yeah, so I'm sure you know that we have an active cholera epidemic. Last time I said pandemic, and someone said no, it's not a pandemic, it's an epidemic because it's only Zambia. It hasn't yet involved other countries, so it's not pandemic. It's an epidemic.
so I guess it's easier to simply say outbreak, yeah?
Okay, yeah, we're having a cholera outbreak, and so far we have more than 600 deaths. And most of these deaths are actually happening in the community.
Mm-hmm.
We have almost 400 deaths in the community, and the rest are from the centers.
Mm.
And you have been working at the cholera center for 1 month now?
Yeah, about a month now.
Yes. How has been your experience there?
Well, I think the first time I went there, I felt like I was thrown in a deep end. If you've ever tried swimming and it was the first day and your trainer puts you at the very deep side, you know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
You take a few gallops of water before you get your foot on the ground. Yeah, but of course, luckily we did have some on-site training. Of course, I do have the knowledge of cholera. I think in your medical practice, we do go through the litany and liturgy of learning about cholera.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 1 or 2 times you will have an incidence where you actually get to come across patients that do actually have it. But at such magnitude, I think this was my first.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be attending to one patient. Before you do 1, 2, 3, there's another patient that needs to be attended to. And so you're wondering, should I stick to quality or quantity? Should I serve them partially or should I serve them wholly? Yeah, but I guess over time you get to know how to do the best with the minimal time that you have. And at some point I was jokingly saying to my friend, this feels like in the infantry at the battlefront,
You are at the battlefront with cholera.
Your errors here may not go lightly because someone's life may just end in your hands. Yeah, and there are a few instances where you did all you could, and sometimes we felt like maybe we could have done better and people get to die. It was a sad moment, but then you could not weep too long because the next patient needs to be attended to.
Yeah.
So when someone falls, quickly move on to the next patient. But of course, I would always tell my colleagues, I think let's learn from what has happened, so that probably if there's a way that we could intervene quick enough, fast enough, appropriately enough, we could save more lives than we have lost. Yeah, I think those were my first thoughts when I worked in that center. It was a bit grim and dreary, but I almost felt like a soldier in one instance.
You are a soldier, and the people working at the cholera centers are our heroes right now. I personally, I'm working with more of HIV and tuberculosis right now,
Okay.
so I'm also in my own battles.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so cholera has been around.
Mm-hmm.
You hear cholera being mentioned in the 19th centuries. And they say that it originated from India.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've had I think 7 pandemics that the last one must have come from, it involved Asia, Africa, and America. And
That's pretty much the entire globe, eh?
yeah, those are like the big continents.
Okay.
And I think some of the continents have still, they've learned how to handle it better than
Others.
Than
Others have
others.
carried on the legacy of having. Oh yeah.
like
personal
we
life on
have carried on we have
Yeah.
carried on the legacy of still having cholera, because I think every year
Well,
we
maybe
have
Yeah, maybe on a yearly basis, not to a large extent, but maybe dotted areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like when we had COVID, it was like I don't know if I use this loosely, like a blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
Because people were so scared of COVID
Mm-hmm.
that they were washing their hands,
Mm-hmm.
that they were using sanitizer, they were wearing masks, and they were trying to be safe. And I don't think I heard of cholera then. But once the COVID pandemic just ended, and boom,
Yeah, it was
cholera
almost
is
like
back.
follow whatever is written in the book just to stay alive, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working at the cholera center,
Mm-hmm.
what have you learned about cholera that you didn't know?
Maybe first let me re-echo what I probably already know, is that cholera kills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a laughing matter. I
Yeah,
just laughed.
it does kill. And but the good part is that whilst it kills, it's highly preventable
Yes.
and it is highly treatable.
I remember, just sorry to cut you off. I
Yeah.
remember my lecturer who taught me cholera.
Okay.
He said, guys, you must try very hard to actually get cholera.
Mm-hmm.
Because, first of all, what you have to eat is a lot of cholera because you need to eat about 1 million to maybe 100 million copies of cholera, and that's a lot.
Yeah. About 10 to the power 6. Um, yeah, that's quite a chunk. But of course, if you're a bacteria, that doesn't matter because
Yeah.
you're small.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so cholera kills, but it can be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of people do not actually get to be symptomatic. What that means is that you have the cholera,
Mm-hmm.
but you do not show it. You will probably not even know it yourself. That's a vast majority. And then there'll be let me say the unlucky people in the population that will get on to go to the moderate and severe forms of the infection. And these are the ones that really need to be attended to at the cholera centers. And prompt treatment will really determine whether someone lives or they die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and others really can actually be treated from home. Okay, you just take your oral rehydration salts. There's a standard oral rehydration salts from WHO and
Yeah.
yeah, UNICEF, which people can take at home. And that's why sometimes, not sometimes, when we discharge patients, we discharge them on ORS so that they continue taking it at home. And of course, you also, people might want to know how long am I still cholera, or do I still have cholera within me, especially even after I've been discharged. So cholera on a typical person lasts for about 10 to 12, probably 14 days. Yeah, beyond that, you'd have probably shed most of that out. And so you can still hang around in the community, go but of course, still maintain the preventive measures so that you still
Okay.
don't recontract it and the like.
So what you're saying is that people get cholera.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know it maybe for about 2 weeks. They don't know they have cholera
Mm-hmm.
and they go about living their lives in the community.
Yeah, yeah.
So these ones can actually be infecting other people
Oh,
because
yes.
they're shedding even if, so they're basically carriers. They're just carrying the
Yeah, yeah.
disease around and giving it
Yeah, so
to
that's
people.
why even if you do not have symptoms, you still need to practice good hygiene so that you do not, if you're a carrier, do not pass it on to others. And getting back to the question of what did you learn about cholera? Um, it's quite easy to lift things off a textbook or watch videos and the like, but it became more vivid as I worked there that cholera can really complicate, and would there are patients that would have to would have that we had to take for dialysis. And in layman's language, this is really assisting your kidneys to mop up the blood, to clean up the blood, because your
To
kidneys are
remove
failing.
toxins.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so this is an acute phase where your kidneys just temporarily shut down. If not taken care of, it can lead to a chronic state, which you do not want to go there.
So meaning you need dialysis for your entire life.
If it goes to the chronic state.
Oh no.
Yeah, and some people get to have severe forms of shock to the extent that they are so deprived of oxygen in their tissues, particularly the brain, that they end up in somewhat a vegetative state.
Oh no.
And by vegetative, really, they can't do much because the command center has really broken down or has been incapacitated. So they'll probably just be bedridden. They can't feed themselves. They can't get out of bed. They can't go and pee. Like everything just happens to them on the bed. So they're really assisted living. Yeah, you're assisting their living, for lack of a better term. And one thing that also came out quite prominently was the high levels of alcohol withdrawal. I'll not be quick to say cholera causes alcohol withdrawal because I would be incorrect.
No, it's affecting the charcoalers.
But
you've heard drunkards, eh?
But it exposes people that drink and in heavy bouts.
Yeah.
Because now they're taken out from the alcohol and they're having withdrawal, and so these people come confused. They are hallucinating. I requested a gentleman. We had to restrain him, physically restrain him. He was quite violent. He thought he was actually heading cattle.
Oh no.
He kept on whistling and would say, Bani bela ngombe. They've stolen my cows. And there are no cows in the cholera center, unless he thought there were cows. There are no cows in the cholera center. And you would have conversation with himself or with people that we could not see, rather.
Mm-hmm.
He could see cows. He would, at one point, he almost ran around in the room trying to chase the cows and things, but we brought him back and they're like, yeah, so it exposes people with alcohol. So almost a telling that quite a number of Zambians do drink a lot. Or maybe let me rephrase that. The number of people that drink heavily in Zambia among people that drink seems to be quite high. Yeah, I hope that
makes sense.
Right.
I think I got it, and I think this explains why. I think was it about a week or so ago, the Minister of Health and local government went around the compounds and they were dismantling these places that the shabins that make these homemade, I'll call them homemade alcohols.
Okay.
And those alcohols, they're so, the percentage of alcohol is so high. Okay. So even
because you've got no parameters to check what percentage is going in there.
Exactly. Okay. So I'm sure that I've heard a few people saying, in the streets, yalelo sina karipe yalelo. Like, meaning this batch is not, doesn't have as much alcohol as,
doesn't have the kick.
Yeah. Okay. And because of course, as you said, they're not monitored, and people get so drunk because of that high alcohol level. They get so drunk, and because they're taking alcohol, you keep on using the toilet. And with alcohol comes now eating, because when you're drinking alcohol, you want to be eating these
shockers.
Exactly.
So really the trick around, well, not the only thing, but I think when someone gets tipsy and their higher centers are numbed, so even their perception is distorted, they could go and use the bathroom or toilets in a very inappropriate manner.
Maybe they don't even use toilets.
Yeah, and probably they'll drink from inappropriate places. In short, proper hygiene would less likely be followed when you are a bit tipsy and the like. I think that's one of the things that I noticed when I worked there.
I remember someone asking me. Yeah, the people who move around selling those sausages, the long, I don't know the name, but you've known them, yeah? They're chili bites.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yes, they're called chili bites. So someone was asking me, like, they're walking in town, and they're like, how do you think those people use the toilet? Imagine in
They
the
ask
bus.
the, they
In
ask
the
the
bus,
neighbor to hold.
are you going to trust your neighbor? Is
I don't
probably as
know.
hungry as you are. Are you going to trust them to hold your chili bites
Mm.
and expect that you won't find one missing?
Or maybe go with it and leave the guy who's attending to the load to hold it for you. Or you want to go in with it?
I don't know how true it is, but apparently they go in the loo with them.
Okay, our viewers will confirm.
Yeah, I don't. It's just it's a rumor, really.
Mm.
Now, my other question would be: we've said that patients who have cholera sometimes have severe shock. So, in shock, your brain isn't receiving as much oxygen as it should.
Mm-hmm.
So, this would cause also confusion, it would cause seizures. How do you tell that this patient is in shock, or maybe this patient is having alcohol withdrawal symptoms and signs?
Yeah, okay. So there are parameters that we use to determine that someone is in shock. So obviously their blood pressures will be on the lower side. Of course, there's gray area for those with hypertension, but their pulse will obviously be quite elevated, unless it's decompensated. Their their pulses will be very weak or absent. There's what we call capillary refill time. This is, well, if you had to see, you touch your fingers here, you see when you let go, there's a bit of blanching. There's blood. It becomes white, then the blood reappears. So there's a way that we count that and see. Yeah, so quite right. They might have that reduced level of consciousness and probably even fitting. And of course, someone would even argue there could be some electrolyte imbalances because of the cholera. You're losing a lot of fluids, electrolyte, body fluids that cause derangement in the way your body is functioning. Classically, for alcohol withdrawal, they'll come with they'll have altered mental state. They'll be a bit delirious. They may not typically be in shock. They may or may not. So if they'll be in shock, it's due to the cholera directly. Yeah. But then the alcohol withdrawal, sometimes you find that the BP is actually even on the higher side instead of on the lower side. Especially if you find those that still have energy to talk, you can tell even from their speech that this guy is this person is really having some hallucinations. Like I said, they'll be talking irrelevantly. They'll be having conversation in the third person. They'll have things. Maybe they'll be scratching, or the few people are touching them. I recall one of the patients I had who would constantly say, "Stop touching me! Stop touching. What are you doing on my body? Like, and yet you're not touching the patient, eh? Okay." I had one patient who kept on talking from day of admission till the day, unfortunately, that he passed
Oh
away.
no.
Like probably 3 or 4 days, he wouldn't stop talking, and yeah, so they're deluded, they're hallucinating. So you can have that difference, and
Okay.
you'll be able to treat them appropriately. Yeah.
Now, away from health, I've seen a few stories on social media
Yeah.
about relatives having someone missing, and then later on they just find out this person had died or something. How? Oh, where is the miscommunication? How are people losing people?
Okay. That's a good point. It's valid. Zambia is really a closely knit kind of society, so families really look out for each other. If you're the black sheep, even the black sheep are really, I mean, when we hear that they're lost, we still want to go and check out for them.
Yeah.
Like one out of the 99. Yeah, so even if you're the worst character in the family, someone will come looking for you if you go missing. Yeah. So really what happens is that here are some scenarios. Someone will leave home, go to party or go to the regular work, and they develop diarrhea. That meets the case definition for
For cholera.
the outbreak. Okay, So once the case definition is met, or once you're in an epidemic or an outbreak, really anyone who has acute watery diarrhea is said to have cholera until proven otherwise. So you go out there and have several bouts of watery diarrhea, and your workmates, or maybe if your workmates take you, you're lucky. Maybe you're alone, or you decide because you're afraid your friends will laugh at you for having cholera, because there's still a bit of stigma which you should actually get rid of. You take yourself to the clinic as a self-referral, and your phone, you don't have your phone, or your phone's battery dies out, and it never clicks that you should call your relatives, because you think you stay there for a few hours and you go home. But then before you know it, you stay 2-3 days in that cholera treatment center. Okay. And God forbid you pass away. Okay. Then you probably didn't provide any contact at the time of admission. Then your family will come looking for you. So sometimes what happens is that you either maybe use names that you don't regularly use.
I don't know why people
If
do
someone will come
that.
and say name about Joe, and yet at home is Derek
Yeah, I had a patient
Panda.
who
Yeah,
who told me his name was, let's just say, Mark.
yeah.
The daughter came in, then I told her I was writing a form, so I'm like, "Ba Mark bazaenda ku x-ray." It's like, "Ba Mark, we bajaswa Mark ni wa John." Banane basa Mark, we jazina nyamu moba.
Uh-huh. So people still carry the names that they're called, but and some would use the name. Maybe they are known by a particular name, but they use a different name when they come there.
Yeah.
Sometimes to try to protect their image and the like. And other case scenario is someone just goes out, and God forbid something else terrible happens, or maybe not so terrible, but they don't show up at home for a few days. And the first thing, because when an outbreak, people think maybe he had cholera and they was taken, so they'll come searching, and they don't find the person, and they say, we're missing a relative somewhere in this cholera center, and the other person just went somewhere else. Worst case scenario, they died wherever they went. They'll still have it in their mind that the person must have come here and they just lost. And remember, at the centers, what we do is that whenever people come, we register their names, we enter their names, and especially for very weak patients, we even put a tag on their forehead so that whoever sees them knows there's a next of kin's number, so that someone we can call. Okay, but there are situations where people are just found very weak. They can't talk. There's no collateral history. So they come in as unknown. Okay, so even in the files, you enter them as they have no form of identity. So they are known. And we're hoping that before we discharge them, perhaps, or after a few days, or even the very same day, they'll come around and be able to tell us their real names and even their next of kin contacts. But some of them pass away. Some of them do manage to survive, but they still find maybe they're psychiatric patients, and they'll not tell you their names, or they'll not tell you their contacts. And it becomes very tricky, because now when the relatives come, I'm looking for Mr. Peter Walia. In the records, we do not have a Peter Walia, because all we have is unknown male, age unknown.
Oh,
okay, so such scenarios do happen, and so that's how people get lost in the system. Yeah, but we try our best to try and see how we can locate. We can get social welfare, try and look around and see. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what happens, really.
Okay. Now I heard that these relatives are not allowed to, where I'm going.
Okay, yeah.
They're not allowed to bury their loved ones because of the cholera. But according to literature, dead bodies are not a source for infection in an epidemic. So, in your opinion, why do you think that they're not allowed to bury their loved ones?
So this is something off the charts. This is the part where you say this is over-the-counter medication. But yeah, it's a good question, and yeah, when you look around literature, you do find that they do give leeway for people to actually have funerals and the like. But really, the principle is avoiding spread. It may not be the body itself, but you gathering and coming together. And as us as Africans, our setting is
Especially in the
that,
compounds, the
yeah,
epicenters.
you will mourn, will while we're waiting for some
Yeah, some people
some
just
shima there,
just go
and
around
we're going to,
funerals to eat.
yeah, we're going to, vouch. We're going to, even hygiene in such instances is really
Yeah.
compromised, and really it's in the best interest that we do not have such gatherings.
Yeah.
As a
No,
family,
I do agree.
perhaps you can have your own session, maybe at home, maybe a few members, and see what you can do. Obviously, just don't want the memory to just go by just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the council really takes care of the bodies, and they see to it that they dispose of them appropriately, and it's really in our best interest that that is done. So while literature does give leeway for that, I think we do not want to insult the crocodile while it's in the water,
Ish,
I should
okay.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better safe
Better safe than sorry.
than sorry. Yeah. So we've been talking about cholera. Who knows, maybe someone doesn't even know what cholera is. So cholera is an acute diarrheal disease that's caused by a bacteria called Vibrio cholerae. Now this bacteria is transmitted through the fecal oral route. In short, it's ingesting poop.
Not a good thing,
Not a good thing.
but the reality.
It is the reality. We're not saying that someone is going to eat actual poop, but we're just trying to say ingesting food that has been contaminated with fecal matter. It can be drinking water that has been contaminated with fecal matter. What else?
Even just your regular food, your veggies, your yeah, and
Yes.
most meals that are undercooked or rather uncooked, unwashed. Yeah, and so that's why we advise people to boil the drinking water or chlorinate it to have
Yes.
their foods covered. Yeah,
And when it comes to vegetables, there are people who use sewer water to water vegetables and they look very healthy. So,
okay.
yeah, imagine, and when they're pouring that water, it's not like they're just pouring on the soil,
Going on the leaves as well.
on the leaves as well. So if there happens to be cholera in that sewer water, then you can easily get cholera, especially if it's vegetables like lettuce, where you can eat them raw, or
And
cabbage.
I love lettuce. I would put it on my bread. So imagine I take it raw and just
Exactly.
taste that
So
as.
if it hasn't been properly washed, you may end up getting cholera from such food. Even for fruits, they actually advise you to eat fruits that you can peel, like a banana.
Yeah, the other day I was in town, and I had a craving for mushrooms, and my friends were laughing at me. Why are you craving mushrooms? So I reached down, and then I see a bunch of good looking mushrooms. Then just as I was about to buy them, then I recall watching some video
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
where
Like
this
the
person had mushrooms that just dropped in
in the water, and they were
the water,
picking them
and they
up.
were picking them up and putting them back in the basket. And I had my pocket ready. My money was ready, but just as I dipped my hands in it, I just felt like I couldn't. So instead of buying the mushroom, I just looked
I,
for
I've
other things
something
instead.
else. Yeah, I've had such experiences. So personally, I like buying from, or I don't mind buying from street vendors. I buy a few
Yeah, I
things
do
from
quite a
them.
lot as well.
But with this outbreak, I'm really having second thoughts. I saw a lady selling roasted maize, and I really wanted to buy, but I was like, no, 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 no. With this outbreak,
To the name Balada.
eh,
Oh no.
I was like, no, 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 no. And
Yeah.
I think this is going to affect people's livelihoods,
Unfortunately, so
because
yeah.
that lady probably depends on that to feed
Mm-hmm.
her children. But because of this epidemic, people are probably having second thoughts on buying things from the street, and really you can't blame them.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky thing, you know.
Even I think this epidemic is going to have an effect on our tourism as well. I wouldn't want to go to a country where there's a pandemic. I mean, an epidemic, a cholera epidemic, because I know
The more reason we need to control it sooner than later.
Yes, because I know I'm not going to be cooking my own food. I'll be buying food.
Yeah.
And who knows? I might just end up with cholera. So I think that will also have an effect on our tourism.
So coming to think about cholera, the sad truth is that cholera is a disease of poverty.
It is.
So really, by and large, cholera comes because of poor sanitation, unplanned settlements or unplanned urbanization. I know there's really people ask, could it be that overcrowding or overpopulation is a driver? Well, possibly in one sense, yeah, but really, Tokyo.
Yeah.
Tokyo has a population in the north of 30 million, if my memory serves me right.
That's more than Zambia.
No, that's more than Zambia.
I think we're like, what, 20 million? Almost 20
From the
million?
last census, we could be, yeah,
I think
somewhere
around we're approaching 20 million.
Now,
Yeah.
Zambia is quite big in terms of perimeter size or area size. Tokyo is just like a city within a country which is still smaller than Zambia. I haven't heard of cholera in Tokyo in the longest years. I know Japan was affected in those first few pandemics, but I think in the longest time, no, we haven't had any. So really, it goes back to the issue of poverty. Yeah, Japan is like a first world country. We're a third world country. And like we've talked about the drivers, so look, we have quite a number of, if you look at the epicenters of cholera in Zambia, in Lusaka particularly, it's the shanty compounds.
Yeah.
And it's a bitter pill to swallow, but the reality is that as long as we do not address the elephant in the room, we'll continue having this cycle of cholera, I think.
Yeah.
And I haven't traveled outside Zambia, at least not yet. I laugh at myself. Sometimes my friends do, because I got my first passport, should have been in 2013. And I just recently replaced it. And I was replacing a clean passport. Quite an embarrassment, but it's okay. Time will
No,
tell
at
me
least
that.
at least you had one.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that I've got colleagues who stay in the diaspora, and you know, when we talk about the issue of cholera, and they say, look, some of the measures that other people have taken is to try and see how they can modernize these shanty compounds, and probably go vertical than horizontal. So look, these are settlements that are clustered and planned. You couldn't even put a proper road in some of these
There's no
areas.
space.
You can't put proper sewer systems. You can't do water reticulation appropriately without running underneath the house, without going over and above whatever you may call.
It's like there's a house here, a toilet, a house. Just
Yeah.
like some houses don't even have toilets, they share a toilet, so
Yeah,
it's
and
very
so
hard.
people are left to at the mercy of reality. Really, they have to build latrines, most of which are communal, I think.
Yeah.
And shallow ones, even wells which are shallow. Yeah, and I think in the city they've been trying to bury most of them, I think. But really, even when you do so, which is a good thing, perhaps, but then whilst you get rid of one thing, you must provide the solution. What are the people going to, what's the alternative to what you're doing? And so probably this is a long-term thing, I'm thinking, because I know we just can't wake up overnight and say, okay, everyone get out of the shanty compounds, let's do this and this. So probably in the long term, I think we have city planners. I know even city planners can be powerless without the resources, but maybe as a country we should be thinking of what can we do to help our friends in these areas, because they're the most affected. Okay, probably we could decide to start thinking of maybe making high-rise buildings, like in the reference I've made to some of my colleagues who've been in other places. They said for such places they make high-rise buildings.
Yeah.
So whereas an area, maybe for example, case in scenario, you have an area that covers maybe 50 acres of land, accommodating maybe 13,000 people, you could reduce that to probably a quarter because of high-rise buildings, and still accommodate people and leave enough breathing space, enough space for you to put proper road network, for you to put proper water reticulation systems and the sewer lines and things like that. And it's just a thought.
Well, but do you think people in the epicenters can afford to live in such apartments?
Oh no,
Because
really?
I know
Yeah.
I know that they wouldn't be free. They'll come at a fee. Do you?
So really, life on its own is not free. Look, and you'll be shocked that some of these places, people where they live, they actually rent some of those houses they live in.
Yeah, but they rent like maybe 500 kwacha.
Oh, I mean, look, in the long run, what would you rather have? Which of the evils would you rather have, if we were to call it that way? And in fact, um, prevention is better than cure, as we have always stated. Look at the resources. We are constantly going to be using up resources to try
Yeah, we're
and
using a lot of
just to try and
resources
bring us to baseline. Whereas if we go
to
the
cure.
alternative, we will not just tackle the issue of it's not just disease. Remember, even just the environment is inviting when it's well planned.
Yeah.
So whilst we're trying to avoid disease, we'll also call for a beautification of the city. We'll call for proper amenities we set in place. They'll be able to access proper systems that they are not able to access now. I know, case in point, look at Kawata, those flats. Do you know that if you had to bring them down to the ground level and build a house for each and every person, do you know how much land you'd use up? Quite a lot, I think.
Yeah.
So if we took that policy and see how we can work around, and see, you can always work things around. Change is painful, you know. It's like removing a tumor. Now, it's not the easiest thing. I know we give them a bit of anesthesia. I don't know what anesthesia the system that big can use to try and reduce the pain of change.
Yeah, but
But
change is always hard. You
yeah,
find
yeah,
that you give. It's like how people want to get rid of, or how the government is trying to get rid of street vending and trying to get people to go into these markets.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you find that the government builds markets, but people are
People do
still
not
not
want
moving.
to change.
So
Yeah.
you may find that maybe in a case where the government actually makes such an arrangement, people will not want to move there. They'll be comfortable where they are. And also remember that some of these people in the shanty compounds, some of them are not Zambians. So you find that some of them don't even have the right documents to be in Zambia.
Okay.
So that's another challenge. I don't think
That's
they'll be able to
yeah.
register for any accommodation.
That's another topic, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
So there are all those
But
factors.
really, it shouldn't be a hindrance to finding uh, worthwhile solutions to our current predicament. Remember, whilst we are mopping the flood by opening up CTCs, that's cholera treatment centers, and all these other um, measures, we must go back home and close the tap. And closing the tap is engaging the community. Remember, we're not going to impose it on them.
Yeah.
We'll dialogue, and we'll explain. I know sometimes you need to use a bit more of persuasive pressure, if such a thing exists, and see how you can get an amicable solution in the end. I think all things are possible, really, if you put your mind to it. The problem is that if you fear, the masses will always not love change.
Yeah, that's
They will
true.
never love change. So, but in hindsight, we could say that in such an instant, change would be a better way to go.
That's true. But I've also been disappointed with conduct of some people in the compounds.
Mhm.
Um We recently had rains. I don't know if we're still having them, honestly.
I pray we
But
do, not for cholera's sake, but for farmers' sake, I think.
yeah. So we had, because of course they don't have a proper drainage system in these compounds. So they don't have a proper drainage system. They don't have access to clean drinking water. I mean, there are few places where, of course, they've provided some communal taps.
Yeah.
But you find that these taps need to be maintained, and some people need to pay a fee. So others would rather go to a well to get water than, well, some of them maybe they can't afford to do that. And
Someone says, look, given a choice between a bullet and hunger, I'd rather choose a bullet. So people always find the easiest way out.
that's true. That's true. So we had these floods. I mean, even little rain causes floods in the compound, and there's all this water accumulating.
Yeah.
And the videos online of people playing in that water. Now remember, these are areas that have shallow toilets, and these are pit latrines. They also have shallow wells. So you have this water that's running through all these pit latrine, shallow well, and then you start playing in that water. Now remember, you're playing, jumping around in that water.
Yeah.
Some of that water can even go into your mouth. I mean,
That's true, and it's quite unfortunate. But can I use that as a bouncing board to drive my argument? Look, probably this is the only time they get to experience the feeling of a poo.
No.
Of course, that was a light one. And that's where change comes in. If you try and plan the settlements, modernize them, you can bring such amenities. You can build pools that
Like
people,
communal pools, yeah.
People that could, I mean, probably that person had this urge to
swim.
one day. Probably they're dreaming to become Olympiads at some point,
Really.
On a lighter note. Yeah, but you're right. It's
but also
behavior
remember safety niwe mwine. You may be living in a compound, but try as much as you can to be hygienic. Make sure your food is covered when you're not eating that food, because Zambia has flies. There's so many flies in Zambia. Make sure you have safe drinking water. Cholera is very easy to kill. Just by you boiling your drinking water, cholera is dead. By you properly cooking your food, cholera is dead. And you know that
chlorine,
using chlorine. And I think they've been giving out free chlorine, yes?
Yeah, they've been, but do not wait for free chlorine.
Yes, if you can afford. And that's a problem with Zambians. And this is why someone was saying, was it the minister? Like, you want to buy alcohol, but you want to receive free chlorine.
Yeah. So when it comes for free, receive it, but please do not wait for it to come free.
Yes.
Or you can get your own, please do. If it comes by a doorstep on a silver platter, receive it and use it wisely.
Yeah. Then if your neighbor doesn't have, sharing is caring. And those of us who love shellfish, cholera can actually survive in shellfish. So if you like crayfish and things like that, make sure they're properly cooked. Remember that cholera is easy to kill, so make sure that they're cooked enough so that you don't get the cholera. So there's been this movement by the World Health Organization, which is called the WASH. You've heard of it?
I have seen it.
Yeah.
But I would love you to delve into it.
Yeah, but we've already talked about it. It's basically water. That's the WA. So it's water and sanitation, then hygiene. So this is how you prevent cholera. Clean water, sanitation. But when it comes to sanitation, that's more of the administration that should provide, like a proper drainage system. I know it's a bit difficult in unplanned settlements. Then hygiene. So hygiene kuisunga we mwine. Make sure
it's personal.
It is personal. When you go to the toilet, make sure you wash your hands with soap after. It serves you and also your friend. really. Because if you are shedding the cholera, you don't want to give it to your friend. And your friend will give it to a friend, and it's just a whole vicious cycle. So we're talking about prevention now. There is a cholera vaccine that we've been offering people in the epicenters. Have you had the vaccine yourself? Because you're also in an epicenter. The cholera treatment center is an
It's an
epicenter.
epicenter.
Have you had your vaccine?
The test was, yeah,
Did you? You had it?
yeah, I did.
Okay.
I was about to comment on the test, but it's
Oh,
okay.
how was the taste? How was the taste?
Well, it's not your daily meal. That's all I'll say.
But it's better than
But it's
getting the
yeah,
cholera.
it's better.
So the literature that I read on this cholera vaccine is that I think the effectiveness after 3 months is up to 80%. So it will prevent you from getting moderate and the severe diarrhea. So you may get some mild diarrhea, but to prevent you from getting the severe forms of the diarrhea. But I'm not very sure how long
How long? Yeah.
it takes, and I think they're still trying to establish how long it stays active. I don't know.
Yeah, because mostly these are novel approaches. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So if you're in an epicenter, please get yourself the vaccine. It will really help prevent cholera. Then yeah, is there anything else that I've left out?
I think if our viewers are interested in any further
Yes.
intricacies, they'll
Yeah, but I remember
yeah.
treatment of
Yeah.
cholera. What are you doing for the cholera patients?
Well, first and foremost, the levels of severity. So there's mild, moderate, and severe.
Severe.
Although the mild one we usually say no dehydration, some dehydration, and severe dehydration. So the people that will have loose stools or watery diarrhea and they're still stable, they can go about doing whatever they're able to do, and they can do basically everything. Their functionality is not affected. So this can really they can take ORS
From home?
from home.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, I know it's a scary thing. So you
Yeah.
can go to the hospital, they'll observe you for a short number of hours, and they'll advise it's okay, you can go home and just keep yourself. You're better off just staying at home. Don't go around. Stay at home. They'll advise, and they'll tell you the telltale signs of worsening stress so that you will need to come back if need be. Yeah, then there's the moderate form where you have losses and almost you have some form of dehydration, which is not good. So it's a case by case scenario. So they'll keep you in for some time and just to make sure you're no longer dehydrated.
Okay.
Yeah, so ideally it's still ORS. In a case where there's some other confounding variable you cannot take orally, then we might need to give you some IV fluids, intravenous fluid, and see if it says that you are now no longer dehydrated and you're not vomiting or your stools have reduced in frequency and amount, then we can say, okay, you can go back home, continue the ORIs.
Okay.
If it's severe, then usually there it's just a direct, it's open the floodgates of IV fluids. We just need to bring until, because if it's so severe, these are usually where the complications that they are acute kidney injuries and the shock and the like. So here we need to act promptly, swiftly, so that we reverse any damage that is occurring and prevent further damage anyway. So once that happens, so you start stepping down the ladder until you go back to no dehydration, to a point where you can take your own ORS and you're able to go home. So you go home. So for the severe ones, would give them some antibiotics, and case by case scenario, we'll see. So now we do not tell people to go and use antibiotics at home. This
Yeah.
is a place where we decide once you come there, because really, um, antibiotics do help to shorten the duration and the quantity. So, but that's really in the severe form. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we do not want people to start using, because at the end of the day, we'll have other issues arising from overuse of
Yeah.
antibiotics.
So
Yeah.
I read WHO says they actually don't advise using antibiotics, using them on a large scale, especially in an epidemic like
Yeah.
cholera, because now you may end up with resistance.
Oh, yeah. And that's the case scenario we do not want to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And for children, let's just be wary of children, because so when a child has that, please quickly rush to the nearest health center, and they will advise us. So really, they have almost a similar, but there's some minor variations, but
yeah,
similar
like for
approach.
children, you can give them some
Yeah,
zinc.
given some zinc below 5 years and the
Yeah.
like. And yeah, so let everyone come if you just notice acute watery diarrhea. Come through and you see, and it's not always that will keep you. Sometimes we're just observant. You go back home, and look, there's no stigma about it. Things happen. Sometimes you may eat from a place you didn't anticipate, and things like that. So show up, and we'll show up for you.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Dr. Maloa, for joining us today. So, guys, remember, stop the stigma around cholera. Cholera can affect anyone. Remember, drink safe. So, boil your water, use chlorine, sanitation, but that's more of the government. And be hygienic. Every time you use the toilet, please wash your hands. So this was Health with Dr. Yvette Masaka. I hope you join me next time as we unravel more medical mysteries. Thank you.